What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Talks. I'm your host, Will Parkinson at WillPod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Another episode here today on the feed. It's a Thursday afternoon. The Jets just re-signed Ashton Davis, joined by the legend himself, Rich Cimini. Rich, how we doing today?
Well, thanks for having me. Always good to talk Jets, especially with the draft coming up.
Yeah,
This is
we're in a bit
we're
of a
in it
dead.
now.
Yeah, we're in like that weird dead period. It feels like the draft's like 2 weeks too late. It should be like feel like it should be 2 weeks earlier, probably this week. But I know the NFL wants their ratings and and all that stuff. So I get why it is the way it is. But um, obviously, it's been a pretty, I would say, a pretty exciting offseason, all things considered. The Jets have operated with somewhat within a budget. It feels like, but have done a lot of different things. Some big name players, actually, some moves. I think universally are like, oh, that's a pretty shrewd business by the Jets. They've done a lot of the last couple of years, almost getting guys, whether it's Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown and all these guys. And this year, they actually landed a Tyron Smith. They actually convinced them and other people like that. What have you made of the offseason, I guess, as a whole so far? The first, I guess, 4 or 5 weeks here of a free agency and in a trade market.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just a few moments ago you hit the nail on the head. Kind of a budget this year, and I think a lot of fans in the beginning maybe lost sight of that. Because I mean, you just look at all you have to do is click on over the cap. At the start of free agency, they did not have a ton of money to spend. And I think everyone was assuming, well, they'll just renegotiate a whole bunch of contracts and all of a sudden they'll have 50 or $60 million in cap room. But they did a lot of that last year. And this year they did not. They did it with CJ Mosley, who essentially took a pay cut, but they didn't really do it this year that much. And the reason is because they want to preserve as much cap room in next year and the year after and the year after because they're going to have some really big contracts coming up with Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson and that crew. So they were hesitant to push money into later years, and I understand that. And so I thought Joe Douglas, man, this is a classic win now offseason. He behaved very much like a GM who knows he's got to win this year, going out and getting a Tyron Smith, a Mike Williams, a Tyrod Taylor as a backup, who could come in and play if he has to. So I thought a lot of those moves were just like win now, 1 year. Every one of these guys they signed could be like one and done guys. Even like the guys who signed 2 year contracts, like John Simpson and Tyrod Taylor, it's conceivably this whole free agent class could be gone in a year. But they know that, the Jets. I mean, this is all about this year. We know what the pressure is for Saleh and Douglas. And so I thought Joe Douglas addressed pretty much all his needs with all their Band-Aids. They're 1 year Band-Aids. Some of them could be really good. I think Tyron Smith could be really good. And some of them could turn out not so good. I think Mike Williams is a big risk because of the surgery. So we'll find out.
Yeah, and look, I think, obviously, as much as I talk about the Jets 5 days a week and all that stuff and all that stuff, I still like to listen to, other people that maybe are kind of more national side of things. And some people have liked what the Jets have done a lot. I think some folks have been pretty critical of, hey, win now mode. I guess I would phrase it as this, and honestly, you probably know better than anybody. You've been covering this team for a really long time. You've seen when it's worked and when it's not, and obviously it has not worked in a very long time. I felt like last year the team was so top heavy that it was just so much like we have to rely on Aaron, where it might be still top heavy this year, but I also feel like adding a Morgan Moses is a very much like, yes, I know he's 33 and it's a 1 year deal, but like that makes sense to me. I didn't even think of Morgan Moses to be on the market because he's an affordable quality right tackle, which you just don't have a lot of. But the Jets had to be all in this year. I felt like not only the staff on the hot seat, you've got an owner who knows what's going to happen in 4 or 5 months with where he's going to be, his involvement in the team. You've got a quarterback who's kind of year to year. He says 2, 3, or 4 years, but we really don't know, right? We have no idea with Aaron as much as he says a lot of things. We simply don't know. And then you have guys on rookie deals that are going to get, as you mentioned, really expensive. They had to kind of go all in, and they have not made the playoffs since Barack Obama's second year in office. Okay, and that's why it's just hard for me to be like, well, I don't. Some people were a little critical. I'm just not sure what were they expected to do. Yes, I guess they could have restructured all their money and paid Robert Hunt $20 million a year. Is that really how much
That's
is
just
that? Yeah,
insanity. I mean,
right.
what
That's what I'm saying.
Carolina
Like,
did there is just insanity. I mean, they're going to regret that deal in a year.
oh, 100%. Even like
But
you mentioned Mike Williams, like I guess what you would have traded for Keenan Allen, but his number is massive, and then you would have to give him draft capital, and he's even older than Mike Williams. I don't know. I just Mike Williams is the one movie that's risky, but at least it's a 1 year move, right? And it's like if it doesn't work, you hope you add in the draft anyways.
yeah, they protected themselves with Williams and Tyron Smith with the incentives, so it's not like they're giving out a huge cap number. They did try to get Keenan Allen, I mean, but you're right that that cap number would have totally restricted them from doing other things. There's probably no Hassan Reddick on the team right now if they have Keenan Allen.
Yeah,
It's just, and that's why they didn't sign Bryce Huff, because they knew they had these other needs to fill. Now, I was a Bryce Huff guy. I thought they should
me
have
too.
re-signed him. I actually think they upgraded the position with Reddick. He is a better football player, like right now, than Huff is. And we all know this is all about right now. And you listed a whole bunch of really good reasons why it's right now, a win now. But the main reason is number 8.
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old, and like we don't know if he'll be around next year. He'll play another year. He says whatever, but I mean, it's year to year with him. That is reason number 1 to go all in right now. So I have no problem with that philosophy.
yeah. You mentioned Reddick. He's a guy that I think he's a. I'm trying to think if I can phrase this. If you don't watch every other team, and I'm not blaming people. A lot of people watch their team and they watch the 4, 8, and Monday night games. Like that's what people do, and that's totally fair. The Jets were on prime time a lot this year, and which was awesome. Reddick's an really, really damn good football player. Like I think you'd struggle to find more than 8 or 9 guys at the edge position that are better than Reddick is right now and more productive. And I think that's probably a high number. Can you kind of give me, I guess, your opinion on how like a 2026 third round pick, like why not 2025? Bill Barnwell's talked about how he thinks it's because the Jets are going to trade up. I've mentioned the Jets trading up, and I want to get to that at some point, but it feels like there's no way he plays 67.5% of the snaps because the Jets played nobody that much. So it kind of just feels like it's a 2026 third for a 1 year deal for a guy who should get you 12 to 14 sacks.
Yeah, I agree. He's a really good player. I'm curious to see how the Jets use him. The Jets are strictly a 4-3 team. You saw the Eagles use him. I mean, he's listed as linebacker with the Eagles. They're like a 3-4. I watched a lot of tape on him. He's a stand-up guy, but he could be a stand-up end for the Jets in a 4-3. Jermaine Johnson basically was that last year. He played out of this 3-point, out of the 2-point stance a lot last year, and he did well. And Reddick is one of the best pass rushers in the league over the last 4 years. It's documented. Now he did have a slip last year if you look very closely at his pass rushing metrics like pressure and sack percentage, they took a pretty big dive last season. I mean, he still had 11 sacks, which is very good. But I don't know if that's scheme related. Obviously, the Eagles had a lot of issues last year, changing coordinators in the middle of the year. So I'm not sure if that was a factor. But look, that's an upgrade, in my opinion. I don't think he'll hit that playing time threshold. So it'll be a 3 in a couple of years down the road. So I thought that was a good trade for the Jets. And yeah, I mean, I wrote this the other day. They have 8 former first round picks on defense, which is the most in the league. And if you count Reddick as a defensive lineman, they have 6 on the defensive line, which is really unusual. Now, Saleh had that in San Francisco in 2020. He had 6 defensive linemen, former first round picks. You just don't see it that often in the NFL.
Yeah, it's in a league that is, is offense, offense, offense. The Jets, of course, have a million people on defense. Funny tidbit. Obviously, while we're recording here, the Mets are. I'm not a Mets fan, but they're playing the Braves, and Luis Guillorme is pitching for the Braves right now because the Mets are blowing them out. He's given up 5 runs in the last third of an inning.
Oh,
I
rain delay earlier, but
I just saw Luis Guillorme pitching. And I was like, you mean the Mets infielder? I was like, oh, I didn't even realize he was on the Braves, let alone pitching for the Braves. But obviously, Ashton Davis re-signed, an hour or two ago. I like Ashton Davis. I feel like I've been much higher on him than most people, especially early on. I felt like it took him a while at Cal. He's such a naturally gifted athlete. I felt like he always found himself around the football. Even like 2 years ago when I don't think he was very good. He picked off Tua a few times. It felt like he's always around the ball. And then he had the Cleveland game. Again, he played 1 defensive snap, found himself with an interception. I don't know what it is. There's certain guys that just find the football. I don't know how to explain it. if Sauce Gardner had Ashton Davis's interception numbers, we probably would be people would stop hating on him maybe so much.
Yeah,
But I
in the
guess what
Hall
do
of
you make?
Fame.
Yeah, literally. What do you make of Ashton? Coming back, it felt like I think you mentioned this, and a couple folks have mentioned this. He wanted to go start somewhere. I guess he has the opportunity to do so here with Whitehead leaving, but Chuck Clark they seem to value. What do you make of the safety position as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I still think they need someone there. I mean, it's I like the move bringing back Ashton Davis. He's a good chess piece. You can move him around when they play three safeties, which they do a lot. He's like the third safety. He can come down in the box. He can play deep. They use him that way. He's a key guy on special teams. I think maybe his role will be even more with the new kickoff rule. I think you want guys. I He's just a good special teams player. And after losing Hardy, I think Brant Boyer is probably really doing cartwheels to get Ashton back. So the market spoke. I mean, no one considered him a starting safety. Otherwise, he would have taken that job. He's a really good athlete, like you mentioned. He was an All-American hurdler at Cal. I think maybe he's not as instinctive at the position. Um, maybe he just needs to be placed in certain situations. So could he push Chuck Clark for a starting job? Yeah, I would expect him to push him. I expect the competition there along with Tony Adams. But it's a good. I know Saleh at the owners' meetings in Orlando. I mean, Saleh was really, praying, pretty much praying for Ashton Davis to return. So I know Saleh's happy about this, and it's a good move. I'm sure it's a 1-year contract, probably for something under 2 million.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably one for 1.5, 2 million. You tweeted at the list a few moments ago of kind of the remaining people. Um, Hardy was the guy that I felt like he actually got less than I know the rules, the new rules kind of probably screwed him a little bit, but based on what some of these other special teams guys that have had similar type of careers as him got significantly more money. And it was interesting. I think he signed too late. I wonder if the rule change happened if he signed before the rule change, if anything would have maybe changed in terms of what he got. I think he got one for like 1.5, right? Or something.
Yeah, I think it was 1 for 1.4, or maybe
Yeah.
1.5, and maybe half of that or three-quarters of that guaranteed. I thought he would get a little bit more. I mean, he did break through last year. He had 2 years ago the Pro Bowl year. Then he was injured this year. He had that torn hamstring, which had certain required surgery. I like Justin. I thought the Jets should have brought him back, uh, but they have Irv Charles, who came in, last year, undrafted guy, after a year on the practice squad, and comes in and he did a really good job as a gunner. I think in his first game, on his first punt, he caused a fumble against Denver, which was a big play early in that game. So I think they saw him as their new Justin Hardy, a younger, cheaper Justin Hardy.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. Do you expect really anything the rest of? I think it's probably going to be quiet now. I would assume until the draft, then we get into that like June period where if a Bakhtiari is an option, that's when that type of stuff will happen. There's no way he's reporting for voluntary workouts at this point in his career. Maybe it's a veteran running back. You mentioned safety is in their spot. Do you really expect anything else to happen here? I guess Connor McGovern's the name out there. Obviously, ended up getting hurt last year. There doesn't really, back then. There's no chance he's coming back. I don't know why people keep asking me about this.
No,
That
I don't
that
think that's going to happen.
that's been done since probably 2 years ago. What else? Do you see anything else happen? I guess McGovern is really the only one, right? And then maybe some of the veteran, 1 year guys in June.
They will sign a veteran running back. You can count on that. I'm just not sure when it'll be. I don't think they'll draft one. They have Izzy in the pipeline. They're going to have to address. They're going to have to get another safety, whether it's a veteran guy or whether they draft one. My hunch is they probably draft one in the third or fourth round, something like that. McGovern, I think, is a real possibility of coming back. I think that would be a really good move to bring him back. I mean, Tippmann. Tippmann did okay last year, but let's not call him Mike Webster just yet. He's got a ways to go, and he's kind of the young pup on that offensive line. He's surrounded by a really veteran group right now. So, and he really are as good as your center. So they got to get Tippmann really playing at a high level this year. But I think McGovern would be a really good guy to bring it back as a backup. Obviously, the rest of the league does not see him as a starter. Otherwise, he'd be signed somewhere. And then, at tackle, they're going to have to do something that could be post-draft. with Bakhtiari, wouldn't be surprised if it was like August or something like that.
Yeah, report July 2026. Then he's in camp July, July 30th.
Yeah, or they may not
Yeah,
even look if they draft a tackle at 10. I don't think they'll go out and get a veteran then. I mean, because how many tackles are you going to have? Are they going to have Carter Warren on the team? I think Max Mitchell is probably roster spot is in jeopardy this year. So especially if they draft someone. So if they draft someone at 10, then I don't think they'll go out and get a veteran.
do you buy the Carter Warren hype?
I thought he did okay last year. Now I'm looking at all the statistics. I should probably go back and just like watch more tape, but no. Like hype from who? Like hype from the fans or hype from the?
I just feel like we've heard so much. Oh, Carter Warren, like we love Carter
hype
Warren.
Players so much that you just have to take it with a grain of salt. If the Jets thought Carter Warren could be their opening day starter, they wouldn't have gone out and got Morgan Moses.
Yeah.
So now could Carter Warren be their starter next year in 25? Yeah, he could be then, but they didn't want to take the chance on starting him this year. And I think they're in win now mode. And it's kind of a shame because, those are the kind of draft picks you have to play. I mean, he was a 4th round pick. You expect a 4th rounder to have a pretty good chance of being a starter for you someday. He got a lot of playing time last year. I think he played 300 snaps or so. And so those are where where Joe Douglas has failed is those middle round picks. Where are those guys playing? Now, they did hit Michael Carter, great pick. 5th round, right? With Michael Carter, 5th round.
Yeah. They went back to back. They went back to back. Yeah.
Yeah, the Michael Carter draft back to back. So one of them worked out really well. That's probably Joe Douglas's best draft pick after the 1st round was Michael Carter. But they need more of those guys. Carter Warren should be starting this year, but he's not because they're impatient and they got to win now. So they go out and get a Morgan Moses.
Yeah, look, I thought last year he was pro ready coming out in terms of like he was much further along. I thought in terms of where Max Mitchell was coming out of the draft, and I thought did Warren get hurt at the end of last year? If I'm making that, I don't know.
He
if
did miss a lot of. He did miss a lot.
I just that was disappointing. You wanted to see like, is this guy legit good, or is it like he was good in college and got hurt, and that was a thing in college too, right? Like that's why he was a 4th round pick. He got hurt. That's part of what happens with some of these guys.
Yeah, he missed OTAs. Then he came to training camp. I remember he came in for Becton in the Hall of Fame game, and he did a couple of good things. And I thought, that's interesting. But then he got hurt again. He missed the whole summer, and he was way behind. And so I get that part of it. But he did end up playing a lot last
year. Yeah, that's where you mentioned it. I was like, one of the Jets going to hit a 4th round or 5th round guard or 5th round center that, look, I mean, you look back, everyone always fantasizes about the 2008, 9, and 10 offensive lines. And even you go back to 98 through 05 or so, there was obviously a brief gap where the offensive line was not good. That's why the Jets were not good in that couple of middle years. But it wasn't just 5 first-round picks. It was mix of free agents. Brandon Moore is a converted defensive tackle that ends up being a really good player. Like, when you look at a Damian Woody, obviously, and those guys and Faneca were more the veterans, and they drafted first-round guys, no doubt. But, you weren't like looking at Jason Fabini and all these different guys and going, oh my God, they just have a million first-round picks. Like a good offensive line, you have to look at the Chiefs. Trey Smith's a 6th-rounder. Creed Humphrey's late 2nd round. Obviously, they signed Thuney, and they've plug and play tackles. So my point is, as you agree, like as you mentioned, hitting on a receiver, hitting on a guard, hitting on these guys in rounds 4, 5, and 6, a running back makes it so you don't have to go pay these guys and spend premium capital. And I want to talk about the draft quickly before we wrap here. You mentioned you're gonna have some stuff coming out with Bowers versus offensive line, pass catch. Obviously, I'm full in the camp of. And again, I don't know how realistic this is. Sometimes you hear stuff and you go, oh, that's exciting. And other times you're like, I think the Jets would love to trade back. I understand that. But I also think this is a draft where you could get really aggressive and say picks 4, 5, 7, and 8 are all probably for sale. And if we really want to go get one of these superstar receivers, like we can go do it if we want to. Are you more in that camp? Or are you kind of like stay put at 10? Are you trade back? Like, I think everyone has a different opinion on this, no matter who you talk to.
Yeah. Well, Joe Douglas is